All right, so let me get our first speaker up here. For those of you who don't know, the Center for Economic Growth, they've been around 25 years, I believe, right, Michael?
Yes.
25 years. They're a non-for-profit economic development arm, and they're in tune with what is going on in this entire area, because they're a big proponent of getting economic development here, you know, stuff like global foundries, you know, what's going on in the semiconductor area, photovoltaic area. Michael's been president for, I think, 2007?
Yes.
Yeah, for 6 years now, and he's the force behind the team there to really get companies interested in our area to come here and start, you know, the brick and mortar and getting people hired. And he's a Villanova grad, but we won't hold that against him, right? No, that's a great school. But we're really thrilled. You know, Michael gave a talk here last year, and he really knows what is going on in this area, and he's going to touch on that.
Great.
Thank
Now,
you.
how do we move the slides?
Yeah, you just click it. Great. You might be able to just speak into that.
Thank you very much. Good morning. I'm honored to be here again this year. This is a great conference. It's so critical to our region to have the opportunity to engage those of you who are in the classroom every day, teaching the students of the future, the workers of the future in our region, and the opportunity to share with them what's going on here. Hopefully we'll engage them at a point where whether they go to college here in the region or go away to school, that they will come back, and if they decide that they want a career track, so much the better. The jobs will be here for them. I was very honored to be at Hudson Valley Community College yesterday with the Lieutenant Governor as a member of the Governor's Regional Economic Development Council here in the Capital Region. The Lieutenant Governor came on campus to give an overview of the Governor's State of the State address, and I'm sure all of you have been tuned in to what the Governor said, not only about innovation and technology, but about education and the importance of education in our region. CEG congratulates Hudson Valley and NEATEC on another successful conference. I'm sure they had very productive workshops yesterday, from what I understand. As was mentioned, the Center for Economic Growth is an 11-county regional economic development organization here in the Capital Region. We have 300 members in business, government, education, and the not-for-profit sector. We work to grow existing companies, attract new business and investment to the region, and prepare the region for growth. We serve as one of 10 regional technology development centers that are franchised by NYSTAR, which is now part of Empire State Development. And those centers in New York State are part of 320 NIST, National Institute of Standard and Testing, manufacturing extension programs, partnerships around the country. And those 320 centers receive state and federal funding as well as fee-for-services from clients in the manufacturing and technology arena to provide business growth services, lean manufacturing, ISO 9000, and other training opportunities on a discounted basis for companies in the region. And we work very closely with the Chief Executives Network for Manufacturing, which is over 75 small and medium manufacturing companies in our region that are focused mostly on building or making component parts. And I think that's something that people really don't realize in the region, that there's tremendous opportunities in manufacturing for incumbent workers, the unemployed, the underemployed, and our student pipeline in the manufacturing arena here in the Capital Region. I'm pleased to have the opportunity today to speak on how nanotechnology, the semiconductor industry, biotechnology, information technology all come together in helping and are intertwined in growing our region and our economic development. Upstate New York has a rich tradition of innovation dating back over 150 years, with such iconic companies as GE, IBM, and now Global Foundries. Upstate New York has enjoyed a reputation as a manufacturing center. But economic trends, as you know, over the past several decades, including globalization, has unfortunately led to an erosion of what's known as the traditional manufacturing base. Here in the region, in the wake of this shifting economy, government leaders got together about 15 years ago with business, education, and community leaders. And at the Center for Economic Growth, we undertook a study that was performed by the Lally School at Rensselaer to identify the strengths of our region, our cluster developments. And we identified semiconductors, advanced materials, information technology, biotechnology, and clean energy. And we set out then as a group, as a region, with our partners in our 15 chambers of commerce in our 11-county region, to work together to market the region, to help grow existing businesses, and to spend marketing dollars that we received not only from our membership, but through grants from National Grid, to market our region nationally and globally at trade shows and industry events in those 5 cluster areas. There was broad consensus among regional leaders that our economic development model should be cluster-based. That is, we want to not just have isolated firms here and there, but we want a geographic concentration of interconnected businesses, supply chain companies, research and development centers, and associated institutions and businesses in these arenas where we have identified regional strengths and regional capability. That's because clusters increase the productivity with which companies can compete nationally and globally. I had the opportunity to meet recently with the president of NEATEC, which is the consortium of semiconductor companies that moved from Austin, Texas to the capital region several years ago. And he indicated that at this point, companies want to be in the capital region because of what's going on here in the semiconductor and nanotechnology arena. Whether it's the big R at Rensselaer in terms of research, or the big D in terms of development as part of R&D at the Nano College, companies want to be here. But he said, as we continue to grow our cluster in the semiconductor, advanced manufacturing, and nanotechnology arenas, we will be a place where people will have to be. Not that they want to be here, but they're going to have to be here, and we will reach that tipping point. I'm sure many of you heard last week, Governor Cuomo and Global Foundries announced the fact that Global has decided to build a $2 billion research and development center next to their $6 billion Fab 8 manufacturing facility. I'm old enough to know, or to remember Everett Dirksen saying $1 million here, $1 million there, pretty soon we'll be talking real money. These are billions of dollars. And the CEO of Global Foundries went on to say that they are seriously considering not if, but when they will build Fab 8.2, which is the second fab on the site in Luther Forest in Malta. And that'll be another $10 billion. But we want to be sure we're not like the Hudson Valley where I grew up. And we only had one company. We only had IBM. And when they moved their manufacturing from Kingston and Poughkeepsie to South Carolina and other parts of the country, those communities suffered immensely. And that's why it's important that we focus on more than one cluster. But it's also important to recognize that those clusters are interconnected. You know, you really can't do nanotechnology without a computer because you can't see it. You really have to look at how you take the next generation of semiconductor chip and use it for medical diagnostic work you know, the pill that you swallow that has the camera in it. I mean, these are very, very real things that are being looked at not only at our research universities here in the capital region, but throughout the country. So fortunately, as a result of the collaborative and forward thinking of business and education and government leaders 10 or 15 years ago, and the tremendous public-private sector investment that has been made over the last 15 years in our region, we are positioned as a region, as a hub for these high-tech industries and advanced manufacturing. We are well ahead of the game in terms of making the adjustments necessary to be competitive and successful in the 21st century economy. And we're already reaping some of the rewards. The Brookings Institute named the capital region as the highest concentration of clean tech energy jobs in the nation. The news was spread across the pages of newspapers and websites around the world. The College of Nanoscale Science and Engineering at the University of Albany continues to win significant federal grants to do groundbreaking work in nano research, photovoltaic, and solar energy. In the past few years, GE has opened over $1 billion of new projects, and that's really gone under the radar screen, whether it's the breast cancer imaging manufacturing facility at the RPI Tech Park just down the road, or whether it's their battery plant and their energy wind turbine service center, and the fact that their global research center is in Niskayuna, with over 2,000 PhD scientists working here in the capital region, evaluating the R&D components of every product that a company the size of General Electric makes around the world. And of course, we've had great success in building our nanotechnology cluster, as evidenced not only by Global Foundries, but by International Semitech relocating here, and the famous Project Azalea that you may have all read about in the papers over the last few weeks. Project Azalea is a project code word for a project that Deloitte, the consulting firm, is pursuing for a client, an unknown client, a client that everybody thinks they know who it is, but nobody really knows who it is. And this client is looking at our region for a chip fab manufacturing facility. It's been very uncomfortable because when these companies hire a company like Deloitte to come into the region and to be able to figure out how to get a site and how to find the demographics and be sure the workforce is here and be sure that the incentives are available to build their facility. They want confidentiality. They don't want to have visibility for their competitors. Many of them are publicly held companies, and they have to keep their powder dry so that their stockholders and investors and people who are speculating on them don't use insider information. So we were not really well perceived as a region around the country and around the world, that people didn't respect the confidentiality of the process, and it ended up in the front pages of the newspaper. So we're working on that, but I think there was a second benefit to that. You want to be sure that you maintain the integrity of the site selection process, but it put the region back on the international media stage for a few days, and there are several companies now looking, not just the client that Deloitte brought to the region. And again, it goes back to Dan Armburst from Semitech's comment to me. People will want to be here, but now people will have to be here. So as we move forward in working in the Tech Valley, and we look at our region as a model for the nation, and a model that the governor has used in the State of the State and in other agendas to point to our region for other regions of the state, it kind of explains why we don't win all the regional council awards. I mean, we've kind of got a great foundation. The day the governor brought the regional council members a year and a half ago to Albany to learn how to win the $40 million prize, he got up on the stage and awarded $400 million to the Nano College to build a consortium for research to identify how to create a 450 millimeter nanotechnology center. The people from the rest of the state kind of went home upset. We're here to learn how to win 40 million, and the capital region gets 400 million. So I think when you look at the regional council process, there was some negativity that we were dead last, but we really weren't dead last. 76% of the priority projects identified by the Capital Region Economic Development Council were funded. And if you look at the fact that we had the opportunity to come together as a region, it's not only about the money. People were brought to the table who had never met each other, who had never worked together, who had never put together thoughts and ideas as to how to create a regional plan. So when it comes to nanotechnology in the semiconductor industry, the big heavyweights, of course, are Global Foundries, the Nano College, Rensselaer, Semitech. But it's also important to remember that for every job in the semiconductor industry, direct jobs, there are 5 indirect jobs. And that may be a supply chain company, maybe an accountant or a lawyer, it may be an HR firm to find employees, it might be the clerk at Stewart's or the Napa Auto Supply store. It may be the dentist who tells me he has 12 new patients in Clifton Park because of the fact his patients now are working at Global Foundries. I think we talked a little bit about the Global 450 millimeter Consortium. It's a $4.8 billion, first-of-its-kind collaboration that is going to be headquartered at the College of Nanoscale Science and Engineering. We talked about the 5 clusters. We talked a little bit about the Governor's Economic Development Council. We encourage you to continue to participate in that process. I think it's also important to remember that 80% of the funding available through the Regional Council process is in existing state agency programs. And so when you look at the fact that, that we were either going to win $5 million or $25 million discretionary money in this round, and we did win the $5 million, you have to look at the fact that we still got $50 million. When someone gives you $50 million, you should say, thank you very much. And if you got $80 million, maybe a double thank you. But we're doing really well in this region, and we have an obligation to build the infrastructure and take that infrastructure and scale it up for the rest of the state. So I'd like to just kind of finish up on talking about workforce development and education. We talked about the nanotechnology and semiconductor industry, the impact that is having on our capital region and upstate and New York State economy. But now we want to be sure that why you are really here. You're really here because you are the key to leveraging our ability to continue to develop and expand these clusters. The work that each and every one of you do day in and day out in the classroom, acting as the teacher, the mentor, the facilitator for our children is just an incredible responsibility, but you should all feel incredibly proud and of the work that you're doing in the classroom. Because if we don't, without training people and developing the appropriate workforce skills, this region and this state will never fully benefit from the investment that's been made here. If the reason the next company doesn't come is because we don't have the workers to support their operations, we will have lost a once-in-a-generation, a once-in-a-century opportunity. Education and training is critical to leveraging our cluster strengths, and they are key to capitalizing on our momentum. It's one of the most transformational issues this region has faced in over 100 years, and it is core to the Center for Economic Growth's agenda. Companies consider a variety of factors when they decide where to locate and expand, and access to a talented, skilled labor force ranks at the top of the list, particularly for technology companies and advanced manufacturers. They know that workforce talent drives their business's success, so it's a major decision. It's a major factor in their decision where to locate. It's no secret that the country has experienced widespread skill mismatch, in which there are not enough young people with interests or qualifications to pursue careers in science, technology, engineering, and math. In making national headlines and triggering national debates, we face the frustrating dual realities of high unemployment, but at the same time, over 200,000 jobs that aren't filled in New York State today. In addition to being here yesterday with the Lieutenant Governor, I was fortunate to be at Chancellor Zimfer's SUNY State of the State address yesterday morning. And when you look at the strength of our public and private colleges and universities, it's second to none. We have 23 colleges and universities in this region. We have 5 community colleges. We cannot overemphasize the importance of the community college system in the technology and innovation economy and job market. The opportunities of the 1,200 jobs at Global Foundries, 800 of those initial jobs are for students and graduates of a 2-year degree program. The opportunity to go and work on a $50 million semiconductor tool with the right basic understanding of technology and manufacturing that you can achieve from the degree that you could get at Hudson Valley or the other community colleges throughout the state, gives that company the opportunity and ability to train you on that machine. No one's coming with a 4-year degree, an 8-year degree, a 2-year degree. No one's going to let you go and work on their $50 billion tool without a whole year of training on the job. And these companies are companies like GE and Global Foundries and IBM, Angiodynamic and Delcath in the medical instrument arena. These are companies that have great tuition reimbursement programs that with your 2-year degree, you can go to work, you can get a $40,000 to $80,000 a year job, and then you can get tuition reimbursement to go back and get your bachelor's and your master's. So the learning opportunities that are available through our BOCES program, our high school programs, our community college and 4-year programs are incredible. And we're also working to figure out with social media, how do we engage the students who graduate from high school in this region and go off to school, maybe work in a big city for 3 to 5 years after graduation, but how do we bring them back, and how do we keep the students who come to college here in our region from elsewhere in the region after they graduate? It's a much needed addition to the assets that have emerged in this region and our workforce needs. We're fortunate to have Tech Valley High School, Hudson Valley Community College's TechSmart facility, which is just an incredibly unique resource to be able to focus students on actual lab work and opportunities in 5 technology industry areas, from solar to photovoltaics, to clean energy, to nanotechnology and semiconductors. Our school districts, our BOCES, our institutions of higher education, all serve as platforms for innovative change and the integration now of business into the education arena to ensure that our students are not only receiving core curriculum engagement and education, but also the experiential experience of knowing what a business owner wants when they hire you to come and work in their company. We have some very relevant training programs for K through 12, young adults, and adult learners. At the Center for Economic Growth, our Workforce Development and 21st Century Education Initiative is in its 4th year. With the arrival of Global Foundries, we partnered with them in a project that we announced recently, known as the Tech Valley Connections for Education and Jobs. We blew it on the marketing. If any marketing 101 student would tell us that you should have come up with a better name, but it's the Tech Valley Connections for Education and Jobs. It's a pilot program. It's a 13-county, 111 school districts, 344 buildings, many of buildings that you all work in. And the opportunity is to have a student ambassador, a teacher ambassador, a business ambassador from one of the local chambers, as well as the superintendent and principal, and to come together throughout the region to identify obstacles to achieve the types of things that you want to do in the classroom. We're very fortunate being in the capital region. We have access to the state education commissioner. Dr. King will be here later today to speak with you. We have access to the SUNY chancellor, Chancellor Tisch from the Board of Regents. I had the privilege of speaking for 2 hours with Chuck Diedrich from BOCES and Joe Dragoni from Ballston Spa and Kathleen Springer from Mohanison to the full Board of Regents on technical career education. They wanted to have a panel, and they put it together in 3 days. They weren't going to bring someone from Long Island. They grabbed someone here in the capital region. We are also at Center for Economic Growth. We're the capital region STEM hub, part of the Empire STEM Hub network. We're working with Chancellor Zinfer on her Cradle to Career initiative, where she's adopted 3 elementary schools in the city of Albany under the mantle of the Albany Promise to try to bring the full resources of the community to a school where only 40% of the students in the 4th grade are meeting reading standards. We're looking very closely at how our 9 cities in our 8-county region are dealing with their graduation rates. I mean, we know that they're in the 40 to 60% range, and we just cannot have that if we're going to try to create the quality of life and the infrastructure that we need to attract and retain knowledge and innovation workers. So I know it's been a lot of material. We've jumped around a bit, but we're very, very pleased to be here. We're pleased that you're taking the time to participate in these programs. We're very grateful to NEATEC because it is a grounded partnership in bringing so many people together to create such great synergies and opportunities, because we truly are all in this together as a region. One key lesson from the experiences in Austin, Texas, and its successful bid 20 years ago to become a semiconductor industry hub is that if everyone is here, everyone will want to be here. But if we're not all here to create that framework, that infrastructure, and that foundation, and education is the key to that initiative, we will not be successful in the future. So I thank you for the opportunity. Please don't hesitate to reach out to us to learn more about the Center for Economic Growth, our Workforce Development and 21st Century Education Initiative. But most importantly, again, I thank each and every one of you and those who were here yesterday but may not have made it here because of the storm. I thank you for your commitment and dedication, not only to the students in the classroom today, but to the students you have taught in the past and that will teach in the future. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you, Mike. We're going to have a presentation now from one of our main partners in NEATEC, Rochester Institute of Technology. They have been helping us creating workshops for teachers. Last summer, some of you may remember that we had a 3-day workshop in Rochester. But also, RIT, they have an incredibly good program for semiconductor and nanotechnology that you or your students can take advantage of. So, Mike and Santosh today, they're going to talk about this program and probably some other workshops that you may want to take. Okay? Thank you. Thank you very much.
Good morning.
Okay.
Yeah, that's good. I'm Santosh Kurenic from Rochester Institute of Technology. And first of all, I begin thanking Abe, Michelin, Ricky, and Erin for arranging our visit and making us partner in this great mission that we really create for. And I'm here with my colleague, Dr. Mike Jackson, who will be speaking the second part of this presentation on microelectronic engineering education, a cornerstone for advanced manufacturing workforce. As Mike pointed out this morning, that we are looking for high technology workforce for the 21st century. And that's the mission that's very important to us. In fact, we have been working on this for the last 30 years. The microelectronic engineering program at RIT began in 1982 when the word PC just came about. So we have sent about over 1,000 engineers to the semiconductor industry, and all the time we were hoping that New York State brings those big jobs over here. So we kept pace with IBM, and also we kept working with semiconductor companies, and our alums working in California and Texas and Idaho, they've been actually working for championing New York State as the hub for semiconductor industry. So I will, in view of time, I'll try to go fast, and I'll make some presentation on our mission for the last 31 years. Now, what started it? We talk about the future where we're going to, and to all educators, I must tell you that one thing we want to tell our students where we came from, because that spurs the innovation, that spurs the desire among students to start new things. Now, all that started in middle of last century when, Bell Labs, not too far from here, they came up with the innovation of making the first solid-state transistor by Bardeen, Shockley, Bardeen, and Hauser. So this shows that in small innovation can lead to big things. It replaced vacuum tubes, and it makes possible the revolution we got in semiconductor industry. And we see the information technology blow up as predicted by Moore's law, when Gordon Moore, the founder of Intel, predicted in 1965 that the number of transistors on chip will double every 18 months. And we've seen this race. It almost became a self-fulfilling prophecy. It became a law that industry kept following this particular track. They're putting more and more components on the chip. And today, the devices that we have, computers and mobile telephones, cell phones, the kind of computation they do is mind-boggling. We could never think of this many years ago. And it's kind of this kind of invention in the last century, solid-state transistor and 1920 flight at Kitty Hawk, that changed, this transformed the world for us. I think history of science is very important for students to appreciate where we came from and where we are heading to. That's Moore's Law is telling us that. And it spurs so much business, and it's transformed our lives. The solid-state transistor and later on microprocessor and the chip industry, look at what it has given us. The foundations, we have become worldwide after the growth of internet, and now electronic commerce, social networking, and the amount of jobs and all that things that's happening as a result of that one invention. And look at the jobs it has created and how much high technology workforce globally is engaged in this field is certainly amazing. So we look at the Moore's Law even for our entertainment, computing and entertainment, and this shows it has transformed our gaming and entertainment industry, the movies, the way we watch today. And last week in the high technology show in Las Vegas, LG announced 52-inch OLED display, which is only 4 millimeter thick. So that's amazing because this invention came from our backyard, Eastman Kodak. They developed the OLEDs and LG licensed it, and now we will see organic displays, flexible displays, which will transform even further. We look at the first PN junction solar cell, also invented in the Bell Labs, and it brought a new vision towards creating energy using semiconductors. It happened in 1954, but somehow the energy crisis didn't hit us at that time. So we remained slow in the progress of solar cells. But now, with the energy crisis on our next door, we look at emerging photovoltaics trends, just like Moore's Law did for semiconductors. Moore's Law will also do cost per watt will continue to go down, and more solar cells and photovoltaics will become part of our lives. So semiconductors have a big role to play. And now we are looking at the era of mega PV plants. So I'm showing you some examples of places around the world, including US, that such big plants are being developed. And imagine the workforce that will be needed for maintaining, creating, installing these kind of systems. And New York State also has a great solar initiative. And this is just recent news that was announced by Governor Cuomo that the Long Island is going to have 32 megawatt big PV plant. And similar plants are also being proposed for upstate New York and in other areas. So we will be needing workforce for these kind of. Now, as we work on computation, communication, and on energy, so they get clubbed together. So we are building Smart Planet according to IBM initiative. One of the Smart Planet initiative is everything is going to be connected. So this is a slide from Intel, and they are working on how to connect energy with information and how to become smart in the use of energy, so that will be requiring semiconductor as well. Now, evolution of lighting. Now, solid-state lighting is another area which is expanding. Just like a solid-state transistor replaced the vacuum tube, now the LED, which is made out of a semiconductor, is going to replace the conventional incandescent lamp and fluorescent lamps. So that will transform the way we light our cities, transform the way we light ourselves in public places. So therefore, it seems that semiconductors are going to play even wider role. Now, these devices are made out of semiconductors. So when I come back to semiconductors, they are the key for our computation, for communication, also for healthcare, also for energy. So they play a role everywhere. So this is a small slide which may be useful for educators, which tells us that a solar cell is basically a PN junction made out of a junction in a semiconductor. Similarly, an LED, which emits light, is also a PN junction. In one case, when sunlight incidents on it, and we generate power. And in case of LED, we forward bias, or we give power, electrical power to the LED, and it emits light. So we are using these amazing properties of semiconductors in these areas as well. So it seems that semiconductor play a big role, and microelectronics is the key, how the electronic properties of semiconductor devices play a big role in semiconductor communication technology, photovoltaics and solar, microelectromechanical system. So MEMS devices will be used for, are being used for many healthcare and automobile applications in gaming, applications in robotics. So that's what we see to grow. LED, light-emitting diodes, will play a big role in solid-state lighting, and printed and flexible electronics will play a role in display area everywhere. So semiconductors form the heart of this. So here, this slide is very busy from SIA, but I just want to tell you that the education in semiconductors is extremely important for all these emerging technologies. Now, as Mike pointed out this morning, Global Foundries announced just last week that they are going to set up a $2 billion R&D fab. So when I say R&D, so we will need a lot of engineers who can perform research in the futuristic technologies. So we were at the International Electron Device Meeting in San Francisco last month, where I met with the CEO of Global Foundries, Mr. Ajit Manocha, and I spoke to him, and he is really excited about what Upstate and all the New York State region is doing in the workforce development. So this is a slide I've taken from I Love New York Nanotech, and it shows that the strength we have in educational assets, the strength New York State has in industry assets, and also R&D assets. So we are at the right place. But what we really need is how to encourage young people to come to these kind of disciplines. So that's where we have to do our work. The worldwide revenue in semiconductor is continuing to grow. Despite the economic downturn, we see a growth in the recent years. And SIA projects that, SIA stands for Semiconductor Industry Association, they project that is continuing to grow as mobile communication is becoming more and more important around the world. So the current employment in the semiconductor industry is in the US is about 250,000, and it shows you the breakdown of the employment landscape in this industry. So they are hiring about 188,000 in semiconductor and related device manufacturing area. So this particular job sector is going to grow, and to all educators, I appeal to you, so make this known to your students and also the families of the students, that it's so important to put students in this discipline because that's where the job market is going to be. We at RIT, our Rochester Institute of Technology, about 250 miles northwest of this place, we've been in this business for quite some time. So RIT is a very career-oriented institute. We've been working initially supported by Kodak and Xerox. The engineers we produce are very hands-on, and they're immediate contributor to the industry. Microelectronic engineering is one of the programs under the College of Engineering. It has been a standard department, separate department for the last 25 years. And recently in 2009, it's merged with electrical and microelectronic engineering because we want to get more electrical engineers involved in semiconductor manufacturing. We've been running this program, and our vision is to graduate top-of-the-line engineers for semiconductor industry or go to higher education in engineering and science disciplines. So we provide catalysts for research and develop in advanced CMOS. CMOS is the baseline process for making chips. And also electronic optical devices, nanotechnology, MEMS and microsystem, and photovoltaics and energy conversion. So we started in 1982. This is just a historical slide because since you are starting new missions and we've been there, we walked this road, so maybe we can help you in what kind of challenges we encounter and what helps, what works, what doesn't work. This is Jack Kilby, Nobel laureate, who got Nobel Prize for inventing integrated circuit. He's the one who inaugurated our program in 1982, and since then we developed one of the largest clean room for educating engineers in the world. So this is the entrance to our lab, where freshmen from high school, they come here, they enter the lab. In the first quarter, they see how the devices are built, they see it being built, and they test it. And they go for co-op after second year. We have a required co-op program, and the students go to the industry second year after they're in the engineering program. So these are the companies that support our program in terms of equipment donation, hiring our students, and helping us in research. So we will continue to grow this list, and I'm sure that the two dots next are waiting for Global Foundries and Samsung very soon. So it seems that these companies, they like us because they like our students, and that's the key. We give them the product that our students can walk in the clean room and start working the next day. They don't have to be trained because they're already trained by our faculty. This is what our students learn. So I just wanted to point out to educators, starting from fundamental math and science education, we give them a balanced liberal arts curriculum, and then we start with the circuits, how circuits are made, how they are laid out, and how we create the mask. Having the expertise of imaging from Eastman Kodak legacy behind, we are really good in photolithography. We really know how these systems work. So we make the students actually build these very state-of-the-art devices, and then they model it, they test it, and validate their results. They use modern tools. We have ion implanter, we have CVD, we have very high quality steppers that we train our students on. So that is something that our curriculum is very much hands-on, at the same time very strong in fundamentals. We train for the future. This is an international technology roadmap of semiconductors. This roadmap points out where the technology is going to. So what we do is we move our slider here. When the student enter our program, we tell them, we have a 5-year program because it's built-in co-op. We tell them 5 years from now, you will be entering a future technology node. So we teach them for future. So we keep an eye on where the roadmap is heading to. We want them to walk the roadmap, not only walk, but lead the roadmap. We also tell them what other new things they have to do once they get to the job market or in research. So this is how we teach. This is how we adjust our curriculum. These are some of the snapshots of our lab. This is where we actually build fabs. You see students work in the clean room. They do the design in the computer, but that's where they design the chips. Then they go in the lab, do all the process, then they come to device physics testing. Here, the semiconductor device analysis. And we have a photovoltaic lab, which Dr. Jackson is overseeing. That's where we do the solar cell testing. We also offer short courses for industry, which is a 5-day integrated circuit processing short course. So far, we have about 1,200 students who have graduated from this IC short course in the last 20 years. We teach a photovoltaics course, 2 to 3 day course. We also teach a photolithography course, and we teach 2-day course for K through 12 teachers, which Dr. Jackson is going to talk about soon after my talk. We have placed over more than 1,000 engineers in the semiconductor industry. So we used to export students to Austin, Texas, or Boise, Idaho, or Portland, Oregon, or California, Silicon Valley. And we always we should want to have students in New York State. So we are very happy with the growth of semiconductor industry, which we've been trying a lot, but some things take time to happen, and we are very proud, and I thank all that work is done in the capital region, and also what Abe is doing in the HVCC for developing NEATEC program, and I think that's going to be good overall for us. This is just a snapshot of, we went to the electron device meeting in San Francisco last month. It's almost like a Golden Globe Award for semiconductors, that kind of venue it is. And one of our graduate students, Dave Pollock, his work was appreciated by Nobel laureate Leo Isaki, who invented the tunnel diodes. So he was there, and he's autographing on his paper. So he admired his paper so much, which we're very proud of that. And on the left is shown the device he has made for the first time in the world, and it has been treated as a late newspaper, a late announcement. And this work was done with the help of Semitech right in Albany area. And at that time, again, this is a little bragging right we have. I got the award for 2012 Outstanding Undergraduate Teaching for leading our department into semiconductor education. And I'm receiving the award from the director of the IMEC in Belgium, which is the largest microelectronic research center. And we have exchange program with Belgium on research in many ways. Now, this slide I put forward here to show that if we don't have workforce in our own country, then we have to import talent. We have to get students from overseas. If we don't have enough people here, then we have to export jobs overseas. So I think that we need to work on create our own talent and create jobs here. And that's what we are here together. Jobs go where people are, and therefore our people go where jobs are. So I think we have to work hard in creating jobs in our state and also promoting our young people to be part of this growth. And that's what we have to work hard, and that's what we are partnering with NEATEC. Thank you. And in the end, I'll say what's our near-term solution for workforce training? As you mentioned that we need the $50 billion tool, need highly trained students. Now, how do we give them immediate those students? So the immediate thing is we have a co-op program. So soon after second year of their high school, when they come to second year to our program, they contribute as co-op employees. So we can get more domestic applicants into our program. We would want more transfer students from community colleges. please market it to the community college students that if they transfer into our program at the end of the second year, we can send them for co-op 6 months in a year. 6 months in a year we teach them, and they can start earning while learning, and at the moment when they graduate, they are ready to do a job. So that is our mission here, is to promote transfer students from community colleges. And then, of course, we want the students to go into graduate school and do research and come back as faculty also. We need good professors as well. So this kind of program has to be sustained, and we really commend the help from NEATEC, and we continue to support the mission of NEATEC we strongly believe in. So thanks for having me today, and thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
All right, I'd like to pick up with part 2 of this talk, where we actually focus on some of the activities that we've carried out in support of developing a workforce. I'm the outreach director. This was a position established when Santosh was our department head, and it was more out of necessity than anything else. And just to set the stage or put it in perspective for those of you that haven't heard this before, when we initiated the program back in the 80s, life was good. We had an incoming class of 80 freshmen, huge community college transfer class of 15. The PCs were relatively new. If you had $10,000, you could bring one home back then. So we didn't have to do anything other than teach our courses and labs. But jump forward about 10 years, and that program is no longer the new kid on the block. Information technology was coming out. That was the birth of the cell phones. And you'll notice enrollment's in half. The community college transfers are disappearing. And that was kind of a wake-up call for us at RIT. In addition, if you look at this is a layout of the different jobs in a fab. It hasn't changed much over the years. Back in the 90s, somebody with a high school education could walk in the door and start to operate the equipment. And then as you went up in responsibility, so did the education level. Today, if you look at Global Foundries, I went to a lot of their postings for jobs. It's basic 2-year education, and a lot of times it's 2 years with experience. So Santosh and I refer to that as the sinking arrow of education. If we don't change the way we educate, where are we going to be in 2020? You're going to need a BS degree to get in the door and actually run these tools. And the companies can't wait that long. They don't have 4 years to wait to develop the entry-level engineers. So it's kind of a call to change the way we're teaching, what we're teaching, et cetera. And that's what got us involved in that. So in the mid-90s, we got a grant from AMD, and we launched a outreach program for teachers to make them aware of what was going on and what was available at RIT. And over 8 sessions, we brought in over 70 teachers from across the country. But unfortunately, right at the end of the 90s, there was a huge economic downturn. And as you know, as educators, what's the first money that disappears? You know, it's usually for the educational programs. So that came to a screeching halt. In the mid-90s, or I'm sorry, in the mid-2000s now, we were still facing enrollment issues, and Dr. Kurenic secured an NSF grant, $1 million grant, to look at our curriculum in light of the emerging nanotechnology and make decisions as to what we were going to change to keep pace with the technology. And that allowed us to resurrect the teachers' courses and the outreach program. And that's when the outreach director position was established, and that's how I got formally involved in it. And that. So we had a staff of 3, myself, Elaine, and Tom, and we put together 2-day workshops for teachers called Microelectronics and Nanofabrication. We brought in over 100 teachers. And again, nothing's free. These courses take about $15K to run. And once the grant ran out, we had to put that on hold. We're still looking for funding to keep it going. And a couple of the programs that we did for the students was a summer camp. We had them there for 2 weeks, walked them through some basic understanding of the physics, not much equations and that, more conceptual. Had them actually build a solar cell, and you can see they've made their own diploma over the 2 weeks. So here's the lithographic process. That's their class picture, and that's imaged in oxide on silicon. These are some of the different dielectric layers, and interference effects gives you the colors. And then each one of them mounted their own solar cell on the thing. And as you can see from the evaluation, it was an excellent program. But again, New York State cut the funding for it. That was their Excelsior Scholars Program. But in terms of what you heard this morning from Mike Tucker, and that the thought came to me, this was done in 2008. These were the top 8th graders in the greater Monroe County area, Rochester, New York area. They just entered college this fall. And maybe in 3 or 4 years, they'll be ready for the workforce. So that's an 8-year lead time to get them out in the workforce. That's not going to work for the next semiconductor company that wants to open next year in that. So we continue to focus on the teachers, because the teachers can get the high school students excited, and that's going to eliminate, shorten that pipeline by 4 years. And if the community college teachers get their students excited, we can get that pipeline down to 9 months if they come to RIT and get involved in our co-op program. So that was the slide that Santosh finished with, emphasizing the need for a collaboration between our educational facilities if we're going to fill that pipeline. So when we have the teachers at RIT, you can see some lectures on the origins of nanoelectronics and the fundamentals, and then we go in the lab and actually do some hands-on. And we repeat that process the second day. We look at the technology, the marketplace, the skill set that you need, and then some of the material science steps, a little bit of testing, and we bring it all together. These are the takeaways from the course, and you can see we have the teachers make their own diploma as well, so they pattern that wafer. And the major takeaway that from the course is we're trying to explain, you've got the same device, the semiconductor device here, and you expose it to light, and there's only about 6 basic processing steps, material science steps, that determine what the response to the light is in that. If it creates a current where there was none, so this is showing high resistance to low, or this is basically a switch, a crude switch, that's your photodetector or your sensors. So on your cell phones, your camera is basically a diode device operating over here in this regime. That's a safety light on your garage door. Right? The garage door is coming down. There's usually a laser with the detector. If the dog walks through it, it should break the light. And then the current to the motor drops to almost nothing. Doors. So all these sensors, that's the same device over here. LEDs, that's up in this regime, and your solar cells are down here. So if you learn the basics, you've just got yourself a foundation for any one of these display technologies, solid state energy, or the chips. The information computer technology and that. So the fundamentals are pretty basic. So last year, with the help of Abe and Ricky, NEATEC funded a course for 12 teachers from this area. Some of you may be here in the audience this morning. And we ran through the session. We're hoping to hear, we've got to talk to Abe and Ricky, see if we want to do it again in 2013. So we'll give them a little homework item. And that, because we'd love to have you. And what we had new for the teachers in terms of teaching, the IEEE has just expanded their outreach program, and I brought one of the kits. We'll be here on the break. You can see a picture of it down there in the corner, and that they have all the electronic components mounted on little plastic platforms with buttons. So instead of having to mess around with wires and that, this thing snaps together. There's 750 experiments in here, and that. But the student manual is about 100 pages, and the teacher's manual is about 10. So they really didn't design this for education. So as a teacher, you're going to want to kind of work on that to have a little bit more formal lesson plan in that. These retail for about $180, but through this program, we're able to get them for about $80. So it's a huge educational discount. The challenge is the IEEE pictures someone as myself, as a professional engineer, visiting your classroom with 2 or 3 of these kits, and we do a demonstration with the students. And as nice as that is, that's not the way I want to do it. That's a single event. I would have to put on one fantastic show in an hour, or whatever your classroom time is, to really get the students excited. I would rather have 16 or 20 of these kits at the school, let you work with the students, and then when you think they're ready, you know, invite me in to do a presentation on solar energy or something like that. So I'm pushing to get these out there. So I gave 1 kit to each of the 12 teachers that came. One of the teachers, and I believe it's from the Berlin School District, do I have that right? I think it's to the east here. Yep. And I should remember her name. I'm drawing a blank. Who's that? Dawn, is she here? Or something? Okay. Well, Dawn's interested in getting these for the school, and I've got to follow up with that. I've got some inquiries out. Basically, if they're all for it, so long as somebody else pays for it. But I know the school district budgets are always a challenge, but there are corporate foundations out there that I think would underwrite this. So we're going to try and get some kits for Dawn. That's a work in progress, and hopefully we'll get that accomplished. I think that'll be great to get these out in the classroom and see how it goes. So here are the teachers from this group. Well, like I said, maybe you can find yourself in there. Here they are in the classroom getting the basics. We've got them gowned up to go into the clean room. Here we are working with the electronics kits, and there's Santosh and our program director, Rob Pearson. So the faculty come in. And you can see our little graduation ceremony with their diploma and that. Okay. Now, one of the things that comes out of these courses, it's happened in the past, it came out of the one in April. The teachers now, okay, I have some working knowledge, but what am I going to do with my students? There's still a need for some formal curriculum to be developed and some teacher training so that they're comfortable getting up in front of the class and delivering that material. And so we have one of our alums that became a physics teacher, so it's kind of gave us a unique tie to the classroom. And Dan Fullerton was supported one summer on an NSF grant, and as a physics teacher, he realized that after I give the AP exam in May, they don't care what I do. There's a lot of flexibility that you don't have in the curriculum the rest of the year. So he developed a 5-week module on semiconductor technology. Very, very basic thing. And I'm sorry, I should have put it up there. He has a nice website called A+ Physics, aplusphysics.com. It's all one word. And some of this material is available right online, and Dan will work with anyone in that. But what we are doing is using that as a foundation to go back to the NSF, and we're looking for what's called an RET, Research Experience for Teachers. And what we would want to do then is bring you up for the summer and actually walk you through a process in a period of about 3 weeks. You will build your own transistor, and then the next 3 weeks work on something you can put into your classroom, and we want to pay you to do it. So this would go with about a $5,000 stipend in that. Unfortunately, the NSF declined to fund it this past spring, so we'll keep trying. We'll try and resubmit it. We thought this would actually address the issue now of giving the teacher time to develop a curriculum that would be useful to them and give them time to get a level of expertise where they'd be comfortable presenting this then to the class. So that's also a work in progress that we're trying to make happen. And you know, once we do, we'll get the word out through NEATEC, and hopefully we'll be overwhelmed with applications. That's the goal. All right. In addition to the classroom, I just want to point this out in terms of the importance. Don't underestimate what you're doing in your curriculum currently. In the fall of 2011, Mike Tucker's counterpart in Genesee County, a gentleman named Steve Hyde, approached me about helping with a workforce program in nanotechnology. So we went out to local companies and we said, what do you want to see in new hires? So these were biomedical companies, optics companies, and also electronics. And down at the bottom here are some of the topics that almost across the board came up. They're processing in controlled environments. So how do you operate and function in a clean room? If it's electronics or optics, you need some basics. So there's microelectronics. PV is photovoltaics or solar cells, and then optics. When you're making millions of devices, you need statistics to assure quality. So SPC is statistical process control, just some basic math and charts. The chips have to be mounted. This is surface mount technology or electronic packaging. PACs are programmable automated controllers. Robotics, everything's automated, so you need to be able to program the robots and that. CAD and machining for layout, lean manufacturing concepts, and a lot of it today is polymer processing. A lot of the optics are no longer glass. They're using plastics and things like that. So we put together a 11-week, 30-hour-a-week course. It was delivered by the community college. Okay, so it's key to point out that GCC handled the majority of the lectures, and then they brought them to RIT for 1 or 2 days on each topic. So we did the workshops. Okay. This was in support of our economic development initiative called STAMP, and this is basically trying to duplicate what's at Luther Forest in terms of having a site that's shovel-ready. And Steve's been working on this for 6 years, and that's the type of lead time. So if a company comes and says, we want to build next year, if you don't have a site ready, they're gone. They're going to find some place that does have a site in that. So, and it's a chicken and egg issue because the companies won't come unless you have the workforce. So if you look back at when they planted the seeds for Luther Forest, that's about the time Albany got the Center for Nanoscale Science. If you don't have the education, the company isn't coming. In that. So ours was a pilot to show that Western New York had the workforce. We had 26 individuals. They were solicited through the unemployment or work board, anywhere from 18 to 55, and they were either unemployed or what they call underemployed. So you've got a laid off Kodak engineer waiting tables at Denny's. That's underemployment. Out of the 26, 24 finished the 11 weeks. One gentleman became ill, unfortunately, had to go for treatments. And then another one, work ethic issues. I can see why that individual was unemployed. Out of the 24, within 6 months, 2/3 of them were rehired. Now, if you look at what we did, it was so shallow and broad, it's not training. It was awareness. They could go into an interview and they understood some of the concepts if someone mentioned lean manufacturing or so here's a control chart in that. And the bottom line is that the last thing we were doing for them was helping them with their interview skills. So the companies that we had gone to initially sent in their HR teams to interview the students. They said, these people are so much better than the applicants we've been talking to. They turned around and hired them. We were stunned. So it's just having the awareness, because that gives the company the impression that I can train these people. They have some idea what we're doing, what we're trying to achieve, and that. So wherever you can work this into your curriculum, I think it's going to make an impact in terms of the impression that our workforce makes on hiring firms. The same challenge as the other programs. We need to find more funding to offer it again. Okay. Also, though, from doing these programs, both our program and a talk here last year by Global Foundries, there's a series of skill gaps. And something happened to my slide here. I had this all boxed in. Oh, here it comes. These areas here, it's not something we addressed. It's not something we have in our curriculum, and yet it's something that's needed. And the solution to this is an area called mechatronics, and there are a few places doing it, and that it's a combination of mechanical, electrical, engineering with controls in that. And these are the people that can actually fix the equipment, and we just had an example this week, last month I should say at RIT, our $2 million stepper, not the $50 million stepper that Mike Tucker mentioned. It went down, it wouldn't pick up the wafer. It couldn't find the the robot that loads the wafer couldn't find it. The company wanted to come in, replace the part, and that service call, $35,000. Okay. Our technician took the unit apart, found out there was a couple loose wires, reconnected it, we were able to fix it. We lost a week of processing. but you're talking having to spend $35,000 if you don't have that expertise versus fixing it in-house, okay? So across the board, there's been a call for this type of skill. RIT's Mechanical and Electrical Engineering program has just launched an online certificate program, and we're trying to address this. I have no idea how that's going to work. The first class may be offered this spring, starting in March. Last night, Santosh and I got in about 10 o'clock. Very nice accommodations at the Hilton, Abe, thank you. We were downstairs at the little sports bar to get some dinner, and we met Dr. Sam here, who's in the front row from Finger Lakes Community College, and he informed us he has a 2-year program pretty much in this area. And most of his students are getting co-op positions and getting hired. So if this is something you're interested in, here's a man to talk to right here on the break. Sam, I don't know if you want to put your hand up. Hold on. But this is a skill set that's still, it's needed yesterday, really, by a lot of these companies. Okay. Now, also in the last year, a lot's been going on. It's you know, Marv Levy used to tell the Bills when they were in the Super Bowl, where would you rather be, you know, right now than right here? And that's the way I feel about New York State. We were approached by a gentleman at the, this is the Center for Emerging and Innovative Sciences at the University of Rochester. It's their Center of Excellence that George Pataki launched at the time of his last re-election. Those folks, through the, I think it's the Simon School of Business at the U of R, they identified there's 140 companies in the greater Rochester area employing over 20,000 people, all involved in optics, photonics, or imaging. And the big 5 include, oops, that should be Kodak, Xerox, Bosch and Lohm. I don't know, we got Rochester, they're all in the Rochester area. But Kodak is in there, Xerox, Bosch and Lohm. But the rest of them are all under 200 employees. These are smaller, startup type companies. And the big 5 are still shrinking. Kodak in its heyday had 60,000 employees, they're under 5,000 in that. But the workforce number is steady, so that means the people that are laid off are being absorbed by these smaller companies. And it turns out that the smaller companies could use even more people. MCC, Monroe Community College, has an optics program, and they're always looking for students in that. So this is a huge group of manufacturing talent that's there. So they just secured a $2.5 million training fund to help, again, with workforce development. In the process of doing this, Louise Slaughter's office found out about it and told the folks at the CEIS, submit a white paper for an NNMI. There's a National Network for Manufacturing Innovation. This is a $1 billion stimulus package from the government. There's going to be 15 of these centers, so that comes out to an average of $67 million each. It requires matching funds, so you're talking about $150 million. There's only one other group that submitted a paper in the area of optics. So we've approached them. They want to work with the Rochester community, so it looks like this has a very high chance of happening. And buried in that proposal is a fab that will put these optical chips on a silicon platform. So if I jump ahead, what you're talking about is having an optical device, and that you have to mount it into a package, right, because you need fiber optics or that to bring the light in, and then you have to integrate it onto a circuit with the rest of the electronics in that. So if we can merge the optics with the electronics, you know, that's going to be a huge manufacturing initiative in that. And so New York State would be a natural location to do that. Okay? And you see here's what's this require? Optics, electronics, and mechanics. So we need, again, kind of a specialty where we marry or merge all these different areas to meet this new technology. Okay. Back in November, we had a talk from Ephesus Technologies. They're a New York-based company, headquarters in Syracuse, and they're taking the solid-state lighting, LED lighting, and actually developing units for stadiums. Okay? So this is a wafer. Picture a 6 or 8 inch wafer, and they make the different LEDs on here and put a lens over it. Okay, and then they put that in a housing. They did the War Memorial in Syracuse, They replaced 2 out of 3 lights, so they cut the number of lights by 30%. They ran these units at about 75% of max, and instead of having 110 lumens on the ice, it was 160. These things outperform any other lighting system that they've got. They're $2,000 a unit, but they make the money back in a year. That's because they require such little energy. So this is just ready to explode, this technology. And the interesting thing is the gentleman that runs Ephesus Technologies in 1990 left Motorola when the cell phones were exploding, and he went to Oregon and launched an entirely new concept called the Foundry. You heard of Global Foundries. He was the first wafer fab foundry. It was called Wafer Tech. Built it for $750 million, and then sold it later on to TSMC, Taiwan Semiconductor Manufacturing Corp, for $1.5 billion. Joe Casper is his name. So Joe has actually brought a fab from the drawing board, found the financing, made it a reality. In his talk, he said, this unit is completely constructed in New York State except for the wafer with the LEDs. His goal is to bring that LED fab to New York. And this is a gentleman with a track record. So when he tells me that, I listen. Okay? And Mike Tucker mentioned, was it Project Azalea? And that, well, he may want to keep it under wraps, but the electronic newsletters had this out in December. By process of elimination, they thought it was TSMC. I'm sorry if I'm letting the lid off. They were talking about a 3 million square foot facility. Okay. Now, when you hear the Global Foundries talks, they tell you that's 6 or 7 football fields that they have up here in Malta. If I did my math right, this is 70 football fields. You're talking 10 times the size of Malta. And the Buffalo News linked it to Apple. As you may or may not know, Apple does all of its construction, packaging and that. Everything's offshore, and they're taking a lot of flack for that. So they're looking at what they call reshoring, or bringing that manufacturing back to the U.S. So that would be phenomenal if we could get another chip fab that's making the Apple products here in New York. Okay? So if you put that together, just in the last year, in addition to the Global Foundries expansion, your conventional microelectronic circuits, we have people talking about a photonics fab, we have people talking about a solid-state lighting fab, and now we have perhaps another major semiconductor manufacturer that's interested in that. That's unheard of. I mean, 5 years ago, New York State wasn't even thought of as a site for electronics manufacturing. Okay? So let me finish with this, because this still comes down to a workforce challenge. All these companies could come, but if there's no one to work there, they're not going to last. Okay? So recently I've started having a little fun with the students, and I'll ask them, which country manufactures the highest percentage of the world's goods? And almost unanimously they'll tell you China. The number's 20%. So then I ask them, what do you think the U.S.'s percentage is? So we got any volunteers this morning? Want to throw out a number? Where do you think we stand in terms of world manufacturing? What's that? The other 80. Oh, the other 80? That would be great, wouldn't it? China's number 1. So it's got to be less than 20. What do you think the students tell me? You got it, yeah. They don't consider us any manufacturing. I didn't put the answer on there. I have the documentation. I'll send it to you if you want it. We're number 2. China only became number 1 in 2010. We're making 19% of the world's goods. Okay? Here's an interesting fact that when I was redoing it for this talk, I had glossed over it. The Chinese workforce, manufacturing workforce, 100 million people. The U.S. workforce, 11 million people. See, so that's a productivity difference of 10 to 1 for almost equal output. So as the cost of the electronics come down, the workforce piece, the employment wage piece becomes a non-factor. Shipping becomes more important, and that's why a lot of these companies now are looking, we might as well come back to the U.S. if the workforce is there. Okay? So present this then to your students. If none of them are considering a career, or they think there's no manufacturing careers in the U.S., ask them how many are going to pursue a college degree in the area of manufacturing. And I did this with our freshman electrical engineering class. Well, how many do you think were considering manufacturing careers? 0. You got it. 0. So then I said to them, I'm TSMC or whoever. I want to build a factory in your community, but none of you want to come and work for me. So where am I going to go? Okay? And I tell them, if a company goes overseas, just look in the mirror. It's your fault because you're not considering a career in manufacturing. They need you, but if you don't answer that call, they'll go someplace where it is. Okay? So we've really got to continue to work on that workforce pipeline. Again, STEM initiatives with the students I think are helpful, but in my experience, I'd rather be working with the teachers because I think you're going to have a bigger impact than I ever will. I'm only going to see them for a few hours and that. I keep pushing for, revision in what we're teaching so that that arrow of education doesn't keep sinking. We've got to get some of these concepts down into the elementary schools, the high schools, and things like that. I mean, I hate to say it. I took my physics, there used to be Regents exams back in the 70s or 80s. And I look at the ones today, it ain't a hell of a lot different, right? But you look at the cell phone. Find a cell phone from 4 years ago and look at what you got today. And then ask yourself, why isn't our education evolving at the same rate? And that. And the STEM careers, I mean, it's never looked better for New York State, right? Global Foundries, I've told you about things we're hearing on photonics and LEDs. Solar cells are also close behind, but we need those students. So anything that I can do to help you bring in those students, let me know. Thank you for your attention.